Order. The clerk will report the words.
We have a presumptive nominee for president facing 88 felony counts, and we are being prevented from even acknowledging it. These are not alternative facts. These are real facts. A candidate for President of the United States is on trial for sending a hush money payment to a porn star to avoid a sex scandal during his 2016 campaign, and then fraudulently disguising those payments in violation of the law. He is also charged with conspiring to overturn the election. He is also charged with stealing classified information, and a jury has already found him liable for rape in a civil court. And yet in this Republican-controlled House, it is okay to talk about the trial, but you have to call it a sham. It is okay to say the jury is rigged, but not that Trump should be held accountable. It is okay to say the court is corrupt, but not Trump is corrupting the rule of law.
The chair is prepared to rule. The words of the gentleman from Massachusetts accused the presumed nominee of the office of president of engaging in illegal activities. The presumed nominee for the office of president are according to the same treatments under the rules of the decorum in debate as a sitting president. This practice is memorialized in Section 370 of the House Rules and Manual. This is warranted even though a candidate may not have officially obtained the party's nomination once there is no reasonable dispute that the candidate will receive the nomination. The chair reaches that the conclusion in part based on the statement of the Speaker Wright of September 29, 1988. On that day, the Speaker made it clear that actual party nominees is not a prerequisite for treatments under the presided as though they are nominees. I messed that one up, I'm sorry. The chair has abolished members on the basis of numerous occasions and as recently as early today. This standard entails the application of the rules of decorum in debate. Therefore, although remarks in debate may include criticism of such candidate's official position as a candidate, it is a breach of order to refer as the candidate in terms personally offensive, whether by actually accusing or by merely insulting. Also, as such, in Section 370 of the manual, the acquisition that the president has committed a crime or even that the president has done something illegal is not in order. The chair relies on the precincts of March 19, 1988, September 10, 1998, and finds that the remarks consistently a personal attack. Without objections, the offensive words are stricken from the record. The gentlewoman from Indiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Langworthy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the gentlewoman from Indiana for yielding the time. It's great to finally get to make a speech here. I'm a strong supporter of the legislation to be considered under the rule before us today, including the Central Bank Digital Currency Anti-Surveillance State Act, which will prohibit the Federal Reserve from pursuing a path that could jeopardize the financial freedoms and privacy of the American people. Around the world, we are seeing authoritarian regimes embrace digital currencies. And why? It is a means to more effectively and tightly control their people. That's why the Chinese Communist Party is actively developing a digital currency that will allow them to throttle the Chinese people's access to bank accounts and subject them to Orwellian social credit systems, among other forms of oppressive state control. Yet we've also seen freer democratic governments, not too different from our own, pursue policies in recent years to try to control their citizens' access to basic financial services, destroying their livelihoods in the process. In fact, it was our neighbors in Canada who recently shut down access to personal bank accounts of protesters who had the audacity to exercise their right to demonstrate in opposition to their government's draconian COVID-era lockdowns and vaccine mandates. Mr. Speaker, before coming to Congress, I joined our healthcare workers and others in the state of New York to protest against Governor Cuomo's oppressive, misguided COVID vaccine mandates that led to thousands of New Yorkers, including many frontline healthcare workers, losing their jobs. With tools like digital currency at their disposal, it creates a new pathway for the government to retaliate against those who speak up and voice a difference in opinion. If they had this power back then, would they have used it? Based on our experience with the Biden administration over the past 4 years and the weaponization of government agencies, I'm not surprised that the American people can clearly see the danger here. This administration, with regulation after regulation, policy after policy, has chipped away at the freedoms of the American people. Under President Biden, everyday Americans are left wondering if they'll be able to purchase a gas stove, drive an affordable car, do what they like with their private land, or even whether they can safely voice a conservative viewpoint without some form of reprisal from their government. We cannot take for granted our rights as Americans, especially when you have an administration captured and intimidated by the radical left that has weaponized our federal agencies against the freedoms of individuals, as the Biden administration has over the past 4 years. The American people are sick and tired of giving up their freedoms and being spied on by our federal government. First, it was warrantless surveillance through FISA. Today, it's a government-controlled digital currency. If we allow this dangerous trend to continue, what is next? Mr. Speaker, we need to pass the underlying legislation to prevent any further pursuit of an authoritarian policy like the creation of a centralized, controllable digital currency. Let's pass this rule and protect the financial privacy and the freedoms of the American people. Thank you, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentlewoman from Indiana is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Rose.
The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in support of H.R. 5403, the CBDC Anti-Surveillance State Act, a bill I was proud to co-sponsor, and I'd like to thank Majority Whip Tom Emmer and Chairman McHenry of the House Financial Services Committee for their work on this legislation to protect Americans' privacy and financial data. A central bank digital currency, or CDBC, would have devastating consequences for the Fourth Amendment rights of all freedom-loving Americans. Just as we've seen the federal government weaponized against conservatives, whether it's the IRS, the DOJ, the FBI, or even the Fed, no three-letter government agency should be able to trample on our Constitution. In 21st century America, the freedom to purchase goods and services necessary to care for and protect our families shouldn't be left up to the government. A CBDC is a slippery slope towards ceding that liberty. I urge all members to support this bill, and with that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields. The gentlewoman from Indiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm prepared to close and yield myself the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
America has always been a leader in innovation and technology, particularly in financial services. In order for this to remain the case, we must support regulatory structures that continue to foster that same innovative spirit without sacrificing privacy, provide necessary consumer protections, and preserve market integrity. Because before us is the opportunity to move legislation that could have a positive effect on the everyday lives of all Americans. H.R. 4763, the Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century, or FIT 21, is a bill that delivers on all of these fronts for the future of digital assets here in the United States. Speaking of protecting Americans, H.R. 5403, the Central Bank Digital Currency, CBDC Anti-Surveillance State Act, ensures that the government is never in a position to weaponize the financial system against the American people. Innovation cannot come at the cost of sacrificing individual liberties. The issuance of a CBDC would only work to compromise Americans' rights and privacy. And finally, H.R. 192 protects the integrity of American elections here in the District of Columbia, and we must prevent it. Congress must step in when local officials in the district fail to protect election integrity in this most basic sense. Non-citizens, including illegal immigrants and agents of foreign governments, must not have the ability to vote in American elections at any level, anywhere. This is a basic issue of responsible governance. To ensure government is responsive to and protective of the people it serves, elections must not include non-citizens or foreign actors. I look forward to these bills moving out of the House this week, and I ask my colleagues to join me in voting yes on the previous question and yes on the rule. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time and move the previous question on the resolution.
The gentlewoman yields. The question is on ordering the previous question on the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
Request the yeas and nays.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman rise?
I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, the chair will reduce to 5 minutes the minimum time for any electronic vote adoption of the resolution. This is a 15-minute vote. Yep.
On this vote, the yeas are 205, the nays are 203. The previous question is ordered. The question is on the adoption of the resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
We'd request a recorded
For what
vote.
purpose does the gentleman?
A recorded vote is requested.
Thank you. A recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote. On this vote, the yeas are 204, the nays are 203. The resolution is adopted. And without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. House will be in order. For what purpose, gentlemen from North Carolina seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days within which to revise and extend their remarks and submit extraneous materials on the bill, H.R. 4763.
Without objection. Pursuant to House Resolution 1243 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House in Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union to consideration of H.R. 4763. The Chair appoints a gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Guess, to preside over the Committee of the Whole.
The House is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for the consideration of H.R. 4763, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill to provide for a system of regulation of digital assets by the Commodity Futures Trading Commission and the Securities and Exchange Commission and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the bill is considered read the first time. General debate shall be confined to the bill and shall not exceed 1 hour, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking member of the Committee on Financial Services or their respective designees. The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry, and the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Waters, will each control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, I ask that I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
Today, Congress will establish a new high water mark for digital asset policy. To be clear, this joint effort between the Financial Services Committee and the Agriculture Committee did not come together overnight, far from it. We've formed subcommittees, convened working groups, heard from countless stakeholders, and received input from members across the ideological spectrum in the House of Representatives. Last July, we passed the Bipartisan Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act, FIT 21, out of our respective committees. Each step in this process has created a new high-water mark. The next step will be a broad bipartisan vote today to finally provide the robust consumer protections and clear regulatory framework established by this bill. FIT 21 will cement the United States' global leadership in technological innovation, invention, and adoption. Unfortunately, our current regulatory framework is preventing digital assets innovation from reaching its full potential. The SEC and the CFTC are currently in a food fight for control of these asset classes. They've created an impossible situation where the same firms are subject to competing and contradictory enforcement actions by the two different agencies, leaving consumers behind, leaving innovators behind. FIT 21 fixes this by creating a regulatory framework that will provide clear rules of the road and strong guardrails for the Americans engaging with the digital asset ecosystem. At its core, FIT 21 applies time-tested consumer protections to ensure the 20% of Americans who engage in the digital asset ecosystem can do so safely, and so more Americans can engage as well. Today, we have the opportunity to answer the calls of consumers, digital asset innovators, and the Biden administration. We can establish the next high watermark for digital assets here in the United States. I urge my colleagues to support consumer protection, innovation, and American leadership by voting for FIT 21. And I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlewoman is recognized.
Mr. Chair, I yield myself such time as I may consume. I yield to myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlelady is recognized.
I rise in strong opposition to H.R. 4763, which I am calling Not Fit for Purpose Act. This bill would deregulate a substantial portion of the crypto industry, taking them out of the purview of the Securities and Exchange Commission, or SEC, and allowing them to operate either under a lighter touch regulatory regime, under the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, or in what I have called a regulatory no man's land, with no primary regulator and virtually no regulations. For crypto, that would remain under the SEC's purview. This bill still provides major exemptions from critical securities laws. And if this wasn't bad enough, this bill is not just about crypto. Language was added to the bill after it was marked up by the committees of jurisdiction that would allow even some traditional securities to also exist in this regulatory no man's land. Specifically, I'm referring to Title II of the bill that defines the term investment contract asset. Assets that fall under this definition are explicitly deemed not to be securities and therefore not under the SEC's purview. But the bill doesn't provide an alternative legal framework for these assets. This represents an extreme MAGA libertarian approach where companies can operate without regulatory scrutiny and consumers and investors are on their own in detecting and avoiding fraudulent schemes. While Republican defenders of this bill have argued that this definition of investment contract asset is limited to digital assets under the bill, this is disputed by legal experts and SEC Chair Gary Gensler himself, who confirmed in a recent statement regarding this bill that it would have a broader impact on traditional securities. Interestingly, I don't hear any arguments from the Republicans at the Rules Committee hearing disputing that this would in fact be a regulatory no man's land, even if they insist it's just for crypto. Even for crypto, that would be transferred over to the CFTC. I have serious concerns about the loss of protections for consumers and investors. The CFTC is generally designed to deal with sophisticated institutional investors and traders. It doesn't have the same kind of protections that the SEC has for retail investors and consumers. Under all three avenues provided for crypto under this bill, the CFTC's lighter touch regulatory regime, SEC's weaker regulatory regime for restricted digital assets, or the regulatory no man's land. These are just a few examples of protections that would be stripped away. The right of an investor to sue, gone. Protections against conflicts of interest, gone. The right to critical disclosures that help investors make informed choices, gone. Enforcement by states against fraud and enforcement by the SEC for all of the above protections, including anti-fraud. H.R. 4763 would also upend more than 170 enforcement cases the SEC has brought related to crypto violations. These actions have been brought by both Democratic and Republican administrations to protect investors against crypto bad actors. The SEC is the federal agency on the front lines of enforcing our existing securities laws on crypto firms that have willfully chosen to ignore the law and defrauded consumers out of billions of dollars with these get-rich-quick schemes. Given this industry a free pass to avoid most all regulations cannot be the answer to the serious concerns that members have raised about crypto fraud. I've seen many efforts by Republicans acting at the behest of the industry to pass deregulatory regulation, but this is perhaps the worst, most harmful proposal I have seen in a long time. This bill would deregulate crypto and certain traditional securities to the extent that I and other experts have expressed serious concerns about this bill, causing a potential market crash and recession. I'm also reminded of how, over the warnings of regulators, Congress moved to deregulate of the over-the-counter derivatives. Remember the derivatives market back in 2000? The resultant financial crisis triggered the implosion of financial institutions, a wave of foreclosures, and trillions of dollars in lost wealth. And so I urge my colleagues, don't forget, you should not repeat the history with this bill. I want to highlight that the Biden administration has released a statement of administration policy opposing this bill. The bill is also opposed by a long list of investors and consumer advocates, state securities administrators concerned about state preemption, labor organizations worried about the retirement funds of their members, environmentalist groups concerned about the undisclosed risk of crypto mining, civic organizations worried about the undue influence of financial and crypto industry over Congress's actions, academics, legal experts, and technologists. So I urge my colleagues to stand up. Don't be afraid of big crypto. Stand up for everyday investors and consumers. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this bill. And I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
I now yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Pennsylvania, the chair of the Agriculture Committee and partner in Fit 21, Glenn Thompson.
The gentleman is recognized.
Well, I thank the chairman and thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of H.R. 4763, the Financial Innovation and Technology for the 21st Century Act, or FIT 21, which establishes a regulatory framework for digital assets while protecting consumers and fostering innovation within the United States. This legislation has been a long time coming. Since 2018, the House Committee on Agriculture has held numerous hearings, roundtables, and meetings and introduced multiple pieces of legislation to bring certainty and clarity to the digital asset markets. For Congress to establish a comprehensive digital assets market framework, it was clear the House Committee on Agriculture and the House Committee on Financial Services needed to work in a collaborative manner. Chairman McHenry and I first met nearly 2 years ago to discuss this ambitious plan, and together we aim to develop the best policies possible. Over this Congress, members of both committees have engaged in robust and collaborative debates and educational sessions on current securities and commodities laws and regulations, as well as gaining a deeper understanding of the digital asset ecosystem. Through this process, we learned several key points, including the current process to determine if a digital asset is a security or not is unclear, unworkable, and impractical. The Commodity Futures Trading Commission lacks essential regulatory authority over retailing intermediaries in the digital commodity spot market. The treatment of customer assets held by intermediaries needs to be strengthened. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have claimed this bill will allow a substantial portion of crypto and some traditional securities to escape nearly all laws and regulations operating without any primary regulator. That is far from the truth. The legislation before us today enhances existing securities and commodities regulations to create an appropriate framework for digital assets. For example, a registered digital commodity exchange would follow regulations similar to those of the CFTC for derivatives exchanges, including monitoring trading activity, prohibiting abusive practices, reporting trading information, managing conflicts of interest, ensuring governance standards, upholding cybersecurity, and more. Mr. Speaker, Congress has a historic opportunity to enact legislation that not only protects consumers, but also ensures that the United States remains at the forefront of technical innovation. By supporting FIT 21, we can create a safer, more transparent, and more competitive environment for digital assets. Let us seize this moment to provide clear guidelines and robust protections, fostering a future where innovation can thrive responsibly within our borders. And I certainly urging all my colleagues to support this bill. Mr. Speaker, I understand that the gentlelady from Washington State, the chair of the Energy and Commerce Committee, has a few questions for clarification. And I yield to the gentlelady for questions.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Chair Thompson. I rise in support of H.R. 4763. Blockchains are new foundational technology which will reshape our daily lives. Through innovative design approaches, blockchains can be used in all kinds of applications like tracking products through supply chains or facilitating the tokenization of financial assets. Unfortunately, many American innovators are being pushed abroad by overzealous regulators. According to a report by Electric Capital, the U.S. share of blockchain developers has declined from 40% in 2017 to 29% in 2022. So I'm excited about this legislation, providing clear rules of the road. This is a clear complement to some of the work that we've been doing in ENC to ensure American leadership in blockchain technology. I just would like to clarify some of the non-financial applications and uses that may be unintentionally captured by the bill.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. Appreciate the time. So based on conversations I've had, it's my understanding that the intent of this bill is to ensure that the current authority over certain restricted digital asset transactions remains with the SEC and that the CFTC would only be authorized to regulate certain intermediaries in spot digital commodity markets. Is this correct?
If your understanding of the legislation is correct, the intent of FIT 21 is to draw jurisdictional lines between the SEC and the CFTC as it relates to certain spot digital asset transactions.
Thank you. Can you clarify your intent when it comes to exclusive jurisdiction of the CFTC and how this would impact the current protections for Americans against fraud and market manipulation?
Now, FIT 21 provides the CFTC with exclusive jurisdiction over digital commodity spot market transactions which occur on or through entities that are registered with CFTC. FIT 21 does not provide CFTC with the authority to directly regulate any transaction between two people which is not intermediated by an entity registered with the CFTC, Separate from FIT 21, CFTC has existing authority to police spot market commodities for fraud and market manipulation, which FIT 21 does not change.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman Thompson, Chairman McHenry,
Thank the Speaker.
and Representative Hill for the clarification and all your work. I yield back.
My time has expired. Yield back.
Gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from California is recognized.
I now yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch, who is also the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Digital Assets, Financial Technology, and Inclusion.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the gentlelady for yielding me this time. Mr. Chairman, I've been a member of Congress for over 20 years, and I just want to say that this is probably one of the worst. It may not be the worst, but it's in the top 3 in terms of the worst bills that I have seen actually progress to the floor of the House. Anybody who is excited about this bill either has not read it or does not understand it. This bill is a radical rewrite of the securities laws in this country. As most people who know our history realize that in 1929, when the markets crashed, we established the Securities and Exchange Commission in 1934, shortly after the crash. And what that did is it created an agency that became the cop on the beat in financial services. They became the protectors of investors. And since that time in 1934, as courts have interpreted that law that is protecting investors, we've built up a body of case law that now makes the United States financial markets the most robust, and they become the marvel of the world. Everyone comes to the United States for investment because they know that their investment is protected and they will be treated fairly in the courts because we have well-defined laws. Well, this bill undoes all of that. This bill is a radical rewriting of the securities laws since 1934. It redefines what a security is. It allows financial companies to escape the cop on the beat. So now they can leave the jurisdiction of the SEC and go over to the CFTC, which has a fraction of, it's about 6 times as small as the SEC. So what will happen here is you'll see a migration of companies going out from under the SEC jurisdiction over to the CFTC, and this will cause havoc in our financial markets eventually. The one amendment I would have liked to see on this bill is that any company that becomes insolvent because of their involvement with crypto cannot receive a taxpayer bailout, because that's where this bill is heading. This is going to cause infirmity in the financial institutions in this country as they get commingled with crypto, and eventually we will be forced to be put in a situation where we're going to have to bail some of these banks out because of their involvement in crypto. This is a very bad bill, and I urge my colleagues to vote against it. Thank you. I yield back.
The gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
I now recognize the chairman of the Digital Asset Subcommittee on Financial Services, who's shepherded this bill along very well. The gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Hill. 2 minutes.
For what amount of time is the gentleman recognized?
I thank the chairman. This is, for those watching at home, it's like the tale of two cities, where one side is offering a work of fiction and the other side working a term of nonfiction. And I think over here, those that support this bill are supporting exactly the opposite of what I've heard on the other side of the aisle. You know, since last January, our two committees, Agriculture and Financial Services, have collaborated to make sure that we protect consumers and investors and the digital marketplace by preventing fraud, manipulation, front-running, other abusive practices. applying Bank Secrecy Act, AML requirements, and know your customer rules, mitigating conflicts of interest, requiring firms to hold capital, segregate customer funds, have the right kind of custody policy, have registration for exchanges, dealers, and brokers who are working in digital assets, imposing reporting and bookkeeping requirements, building on the existing exemption regime for the offer and sale of digital securities to include robust disclosures to anyone considering a purchase. With that said, we hear a lot about the lack of legal clarity for the treatment of digital assets, which was the impetus for this legislation. But what does that even mean? Mr. Speaker, on this day, the SEC and the CFTC still contradict each other in court about whether a digital asset like Ethereum should be treated as a security or a commodity. Both cannot be true. When two federal agencies in the same administration cannot agree on the law, it should be up to Congress. And that's what the regulatory clarity that this bill, the FIT21 Act, will bring. In fact, I would argue, Mr. Speaker, that FIT21 is responsive to President Biden's own executive order and the Financial Stability Oversight Council report calling on Congress to enact a framework for digital assets that are not securities, and that's what we've done. I'm also proud that this measure is the product of committee work done through regular order and through good faith bipartisan efforts. All members should support this bill. I encourage a full yes vote from both sides of the aisle, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from California is recognized.
Good work, French. That was good.
I now yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Caston.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've heard several times that this legislation is better than the status quo. There's a whole lot of reasons that's not true, but I want to focus specifically on this bill's utter failure to address the use of cryptocurrency by terrorists, foreign adversaries, and criminals. By the way, those issues, Treasury asked us specifically to address these issues with a whole bunch of reasonable changes. We introduced amendments. Every one of those amendments was rejected. The anti-money laundering provisions that are in this bill simply duplicate existing requirements. And yet, as the bill's supporters have actually argued, and Treasury has agreed, that the status quo is not sufficient to address the challenges created by cryptocurrencies. How do we know that cryptocurrencies are a problem for money laundering? Because the bad guys love crypto. Let's give you some examples. North Korean hackers have stolen $3 billion in cryptocurrency since 2017. White House national security officials have said last year that crypto theft and cybercrime have funded half of North Korea's nuclear program. Russia and Venezuela are both using crypto to evade U.S. sanctions. Venezuela recently said that because of the bite of sanctions, they are now moving to accept payments in crypto because that allows them to get money that we in Washington cannot track. Treasury Department's reviewing more than $20 billion of cryptocurrency that was laundered through a Russian-based cryptocurrency exchange. The Treasury Department has noted that Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, ISIS, and Al-Qaeda are all using crypto to finance terrorist attacks generally. Crypto is the preferred means of payment for fentanyl trafficking. Chinese businesses that sell fentanyl chemical ingredients to Mexican cartels have accepted millions in crypto payments. They've sold enough ingredients to make more than $54 billion worth of fentanyl pills. That's enough to kill 8.6 billion people if you're counting. Blockchain analysis firm Chainalytics said in January, and I quote, "Virtual currency is the dominant choice for buyers and sellers of child sexual abuse content." FinCEN basically said the same thing, said perpetrators of online child sexual exploitation are increasingly using convertible virtual currency to avoid detection. I could go on and on. These are not cherry-picked statistics. These are statistics from U.S. officials and from crypto firms, people who are entrusted with protecting our national security and care about this stuff. The Treasury Department asked for new rules to protect this. Every single one of those proposals was objected to either in the Financial Services Committee, the Ag Committee, or in the Rules Committee. If that was all this bill did, that would be one thing. But in fact, this bill goes out of its way to make it weaker by basically saying that anybody who uses unhosted wallets, decentralized or DeFi services is exempted from regulation, ignoring recommendations from both the Trump and Biden administration. Now, My Republican colleagues will boast that in this rule there's specific language that says that brokers and dealers are required to comply with anti-money laundering requirements. They're already required to do that. This bill does nothing to address that. It's exactly the same. You're going to brag about saying it's now illegal to speed. What we should have done, we should have made provisions to ban anonymous actors, to prevent you from saying, I want to move crypto from my account to yours, and I'm going to move it through an anonymous party so you can't tell what a bad guy I am. It should have banned people from using digital asset mixers that allow you to take a whole bunch of people, combine all their money together, and then give you something where you can't trace it through. If you want to understand how crazy this is, I would encourage you to go to your bank and try to deposit $10,000 in cash at your bank. Your bank will tell you, you have to tell me where that money came from. I'm going to take you back behind the counter. We're going to have to take your picture. We're going to have to get fingerprints because I do not like money laundering and I am obliged to protect it. By comparison, if you want to move $1 million of crypto from one person's account to another, send it through these mixers, send it through these anonymizers, you can do it. Do I have a little bit more time?
I yield to the gentleman an additional half minute.
Gentleman is recognized.
So we've got all these mixers that are used. Why were they not included in there? I don't know. I know why the crypto industry doesn't want them included in there. Because they are profiting from people who are using these illicit services. The largest cryptocurrency exchange that stands to benefit from this regime helped to finance a legal challenge to the Treasury Department's case against Tornado Cash, which was the largest asset mixer in the world. This is a bad bill. It fails to address known problems. What it does do, however, is make the United States safer for drug traffickers, for terrorist funders, for child and drug traffickers, and for those who buy and sell child pornography. I did not know those groups had such advocates in Congress, but I am proud to oppose them and encourage all my colleagues to do the same. I yield back.
Gentlelady reserves. The gentleman from North Carolina is recognized.
I now yield 2 minutes from the gentleman from South Dakota, my good friend, Mr. Johnson, the chair of the Digital Asset Commodities Rural Development Subcommittee on the Agriculture Committee.
Gentleman is recognized.
Here in Congress, we're supposed to be in the problem-solving business, and my oh my, do we have problems in the digital asset space. In recent years, we have seen the FTX debacle, a debacle that happened under the regulatory regime that some members apparently are so enamored with, a regime that does not work today. We have seen chronic and disruptive overreach by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And we have seen innovation and investment flow overseas. Mr. Speaker, they seek markets that are more predictable. We are the only G7 country that hasn't figured this out yet. And so clearly we have problems. I would submit that FIT 21 is the solution. We, for more than a year, French Hill and I, working with Chairs McHenry and Thompson and members on both sides of the aisle, have worked hard to together craft a solution that increases regulatory predictability, that increases consumer protection, and that will foster innovation. I know that success has many fathers and mothers, and so I do want to thank Mrs. McHenry and Thompson, Hill, Emmer, Davidson on the Republican side. But I do need to especially recognize my colleagues on the Democratic side of the aisle, particularly Mr. Nickel and Ms. Caraveo, who have invested countless hours in getting this bill right. They have been joined by Himes, Crockett, Torres, Soto, Gottheimer, Davis. This bill, this success, would not be possible without their good faith efforts, and I thank them. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from California is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, members, it is no mystery why the crypto industry refers to be regulated by the CFTC rather than the SEC. Let's start with the substantial differences in funding and staff for the CFTC compared to SEC. In 2023, the CFTC employed roughly 680 full-time employees with an annual budget of $365 million, while the Security and Exchange Commission, the SEC, employed over 4,500 and had a budget of over $2 billion. Even with the limited funding provided to the CFTC under this bill, which is capped at $40 million and set to expire after 4 years, the CFT's funding would be only 1/5 of the SEC's budget. $40 billion is not sufficient to oversee more than 16,000 cryptocurrency. Let's not forget that the same Republicans that are bringing this bill to the floor are the same ones that proposed cutting CFTC's budget last year. Moreover, the CFTC is designed to deal mostly with sophisticated institutional investors and traders rather than retail investors and consumers. Therefore, the CFTC does not have the same level of protections for retail investors and consumers. And so, Mr. Speaker and members, I would simply say that we should look at this example. The CFTC has no mandate like the SEC that requires entities to act in the best interest of the investors or to put their clients' interests first. This is just another reason why I am very concerned about the light touch regulatory regime under the CFTC. With that, I now yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from California, Mr. Sherman, who is also the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Capital Markets.
Last week, we had Police Week. This week, the Republicans show us that they support crime in the suites. The effect of this bill short term will be to disempower the most effective investor protection crime investigation organization in the world, the SEC. But the long-term objective of the crypto billionaire bros is to create a new currency, and they've named it well. Cryptocurrency literally means hidden money. And if it ever becomes a currency, it means that we will not be able to enforce our tax laws except on wage earners. And we will not be able to enforce our laws against child and traffickers, drug dealers, and those who violate our sanctions. Now, the crypto bros have a lot of money. They make money by literally making money. They spread it around all Washington. They had Sam Bankman-Fried do it. Now he's in jail. Others have stepped forward. They've got a PR campaign. The Lakers don't play at enforced tax laws arena. They don't play at an arena dedicated to law enforcement. They play at crypto.com arena. But in spite of all that money and power, 3/4 of Democrats voted no on this bill when it was before our committee. There are those who say they want clarity. We have the clarity. The SEC has jurisdiction. What they really want is a patina of regulation, as little regulation as possible to claim to be regulated. Now, this bill would be bad enough if we were dealing with the original statute. And I know a lot of my colleagues have had meetings in their offices and they were told about this bill weeks ago, months ago. Some are leaning toward voting for it because they don't know that they dropped a new title in the bill just a few weeks ago. What does that new title do? Does it prohibit secret wallets, self-custody wallets? No. Does it outlaw the mixers that have as their sole purpose to mix up law enforcement? No. What does this new title do? It defines an investment contract in a new way, designed to make this bill not just applicable to crypto, but it says our regular stocks and bonds can be put on blockchain and have no regulation from the SEC. It is a dagger at the $100 trillion capital markets that we have that finance our whole economy. It doesn't just say, well, you're moving from SEC's tough regulation to the CFTC's weak regulation. It allows crypto to get no regulation by defining themselves as an investment contract. So this is a bill that will gut regulation of crypto and may gut regulation of all of our capital markets. but it goes beyond that. Its ultimate purpose is to move forward with this cryptocurrency project. Now, right now, crypto is not a currency. There are very few purchases of goods with crypto. You can't buy a sandwich. But if crypto becomes a currency, but the very few times, as Mr. Kasten pointed out, that crypto is used as a means of exchange, it's used by the worst criminals in the world. But if crypto does become a currency, then we will not be able to enforce our other laws. Now, we have to understand, every time a billionaire cheats on his taxes, a member of the Freedom Caucus earns his wings. The patriotic anarchists come forward and they say, we want a strong America and we want to destroy the power of the American government. You can't have it both ways. This is a bill that in the short term means no regulation for of crypto. Not just lighter regulation under the CFTC, but no regulation under their new title. It is a bill that could gut all securities regulation for the stocks and bonds that power the American economy. And then longer term, it creates a competitor to the US dollar, which has one advantage. It's right in the name, hidden money. Hide your money from the IRS.
Third additional second.
The gentleman's recognized.
You have to understand how important it is. We, frankly, are not fiscally responsible in this House. We don't collect near as much taxes as we spend in that without too much harm because of the role of the US dollar as a reserve currency. We have fiscal policies that would make Argentina blush, but we're able to do it. The crypto bros see the incredible amount of money and power the US government has by being the world's reserve currency, and they say no, they want to appropriate them from themselves.
The gentlelady from California reserves. The gentleman from North Carolina.